Roger North, and this is Great Info to Know. Today is going to be a very special show, a show I've been very excited about, because we're going to look at some issues in some real depth. Just kind of give you a little brief introduction. At the risk of stating the obvious, we live in a world full of conflicts, of problems. And it doesn't exactly take a genius to conclude that the problems seem to be getting worse and worse by the day. We're moving into deeper economic problems. We're moving towards more wars. And, there's been many, many shows that have discussed these issues where people have talked about. I've discussed many of these issues myself, and there's certainly no shortage of radio shows that discuss the stuff in great detail. Quite frankly, the number of issues is almost innumerable at this point. But I want to do something a little different today and ask some deeper questions. For example, what is really, really going on? What is happening at the deepest levels? Why is all this happening? And we need to ask those questions so we can ask the most important question of all, what can we do about it? You see, people taking action without having a deeper understanding, they can be playing in the hands of the very people that they don't want to be helping. They can be inadvertently causing their own destruction. It happens all the time. Anyways, these questions are the topics that we'll be discussing with our guest, Roxy Lopez. Roxy is a native Hawaiian who has spent most of her adult life in the music industry, is a major label recording artist and performer. She is also a published author and radio talk show host, or she was. She no longer has a show, of the Truth Denied talk show, Talk Radio, as well as founder of one of the most popular alternative media tabloids called The Truth Denied. Website, thetruth.denied.com. That's thetruth.denied.com. It's full of really extraordinary videos. Please do check it out. The Truth Denied acquired worldwide attention when Lopez made a global stance against geoengineering, ACA, also known as chemtrails, GMOs, fracking, environmental health hazards, Morgellons disease, gang stalking, and illegal government surveillance programs that are increasingly on the rise. Roxy opens the can of worms to the secrets of the global government is keeping from all of us. And we want to actually be looking at those secrets in a lot more detail and open up a much bigger can of worms. And with that, I welcome Roxy to the show. Roxy, how are you doing?
Great, and thank you. What a great introduction, Roger. It's great to be on the show. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. So I said, I'm just going to very briefly kind of just go over some basic things that are happening, and at the risk of being a little redundant, because probably most people are well aware. I mean, for example, it's pretty obvious that that there seems to be a great desire among the elites to enter us into World War III. They seem to look for any pretext to invade Syria, Iran. Now they're, of course, working on Ukraine. We have AFRICOM, which is, basically supposedly for Boko Haram is launching military operations throughout a lot of Africa. Before that, we have, of course, had Coney 2012, which was also a scam. Coney was a CIA agent, and Boko Haram is looking like they're part of Al Qaeda, which is run by the CIA. At home, we have a government that is, increasingly becoming flat out totalitarian. They spy on everything we do, as is well known. We could go on and on. They try and bring capital controls so they can basically have some kind of an engineered financial catastrophe and then steal everyone's money. They won't be able to, go to the escape exits, basically. We're seeing a lot of things happening in this world, and very few of them are very positive, unfortunately, at least at one level. And there are many levels to look at this. So what I want to do is just really, briefly kind of say, okay, this is what's going on. This is easily verifiable, and, anyone who doesn't really get that we're in a lot of trouble and our world is going in really the wrong direction in a lot of ways, I kind of feel sorry for you. If that's the case, please check out a show like InfoWars, a website like InfoWars, and, DavidIke.com does a lot of things on that. Roxy's done that on her website, thetruthDenied.com. There's many sources of information on this, but I don't want to really go there. I wanted to look at some of the deeper issues. And for that, this is because my feeling is we have to understand what's going on at the deepest level, or at least a deeper level, if we're going to get out of this mess, because the world that we're moving towards is one I don't want to live in. It's a world portrayed by in such movies as The Hunger Games, and I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I speak for virtually everyone that we don't want to go into the world that the elites have, quite, stated very thoroughly this is what they plan to do to us and where they want to take the world. It's not a world I want to live in or that I'm sure you want to live in. And with that, I wanted to welcome Roxy. And Roxy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then I want to ask you some questions and kind of build on from there. How did you get involved in this kind of work?
Sure. Well, my entire life has been focused on basically I have an attitude of service. So when I was really young, I got involved in saving the whales, saving the dolphins, anything I could on the beachfronts in Hawaii, and get involved in environmental, whatever stuff was going on at the time. And it's just my nature. But as far as building the tabloid, The Truth Denied, that came about in a shifting of gears of really seeing exactly what you're talking about, Roger, which is the world was speeding up, and the headline news, is just enormous these days. Propaganda-filled mainstream news. Mm-hmm. And I just felt in conversations I was having on Facebook, which was a great place to start with talking with other people and finding out that other people were thinking about the same thing and that there were a lot of critical minds out there as well, which is really helpful when you're having like really deep conversations. And you realize that everybody's not a numbskull, everybody is not asleep, and that's how it all began. And to be honest with you, how I got the Truth Denied website going was somebody had called me in relationship to chemtrails. And they called me from California, and they said, Roxy, there's open lines on Coast to Coast tonight. You've got to call in. Ian Puddent is the host tonight. And I said, oh, no, I never call that in. And no, you got to call in. Because they won't listen to us. They'll just hang up on us because we call them too much. So anyway, I ended up calling, and sure enough, the callers before me were talking about chemtrails. This is like roughly four years ago now. And I thought, oh, God, Ian Punnett is, when it gets to my call, he's just going to hang up on me because that's what he was doing to everybody else when they were bringing up chemtrails. So I called, and I said a few statistics, and I said, da-da-da-da-da. And anyway, he embraced the conversation. I thought, how strange, because he just hung up on everybody else. And then he said the magic words, do you have a website? Because I'd like to take a look at it. And at that point, I hadn't had a website. I hadn't even thought of developing a website. And I said, right, well, I will have one, and I'll contact you later. And that got my, burned to me, lit a fire under me. So that I built, got together and built a website with some volunteers who I could not do this without volunteers. And from there, it went into radio right away. I got contacted right away. And I started doing interviews, believe it or not, on AM radio. And then the next thing you know, we, started doing investigations and putting those up on YouTube and sort of breaking a bunch of myths that had been going on for years and years because I wasn't inside the alternative anything at that point. I was creating my own little path, you understand what I'm saying? So I didn't even know about all these people that had been, in the game and alternative everything and UFOs and everything else. I knew some of them from going to seminars, so created the path. And a lot of people had told us that we couldn't do it without volunteers. And a lot of other people said you'll never get volunteers. You'll never get people to build a website. You'll never get people to do this stuff for free. And I said, yeah, I will, because this is all about us, which is what you really kind of touched on, the us part. And so from there, here we are today. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one thing, and I suppose, I remember I talked to you a few days ago, we were talking about grounding, and kind of a little story happened. I was running some errands, and I live in Long Beach, California, and there's a beach I've never gone to, and today I had a little time, after running some errands, and so on an impulse I went there. And the beach was called Mother's Beach. And the name was very appropriate because basically it was a bunch of young families. I mean, I was there just by myself, but I'd be willing to say half the people there at that beach were probably under 10, and maybe even 30-40% were probably 5 or less. It was remarkable, and it just felt so wonderful being in this children's energy. And it really got me thinking about why I'm doing this show and why, especially why I want to talk about these topics, because I see all these beautiful, wonderful, innocent children. And I know the nightmarish plans that are busily being implemented, and it's like, this is not the future I want for them. This is not the future they want. And, as you point on your website, we're 7 billion strong. I mean, what are we doing? And, because of this, this is something that it kind of really motivated me, because it kind of regrounded me as to why I'm doing this, and just being in the energy of all those young children. And it was just a very happy, playful environment. I could have almost stayed there, but, obviously I had my commitment to do this. So I think that's something I want people to really understand, because the world that's being created right now is a world that I don't think very much want, with the exception of people at the very, very top or very, very bottom, depending on how you look at it. So I think that's the big preamble I want to get, and now I want to really start looking at what's happening at a deeper level, because, like I said, I think there's a lot of people in the, for want of a better term, conspiracy community that are kind of going around circles. They're going the same issues over and over, and they're exposing more things, and more corruption is coming up, and more of the evil is being exposed. And that's a good thing. That's an important thing, but we need to also, at the same time, look at things deeper. So, first of all, a question. The first question I ask, and I want to kind of go over with you, is what do you think is really going on here at a deep level, really, really going on, to use the title of this episode?
Well, let's back up a little bit. First
Sure.
of all, I don't think there's anything new going on the planet that hasn't already been going on. In other words, there has always been a symptom of diabolical cover-up and lying, and seems to be like a yin-yang, a black and white, light and dark, seems to be that way on this planet from the beginning of time. So all I think at this point is that what we are seeing, or what we are feeling is a better way to put it, is the culmination of maybe many, many generations, and maybe even civilizations on this earth. Our planet, our people, our citizens, bring it home. We need to evolve. And evolution isn't something that I don't think we can make happen. I think it's something that naturally occurs if you look out at nature, and there's many, many signs of proof of even nature evolves, and it's continuing to evolve. Somehow there's a lot of theories on this as to why humans, or the human species, seems to not be evolving in a more rapid pace than it should be, or some type of pace. It seems like, you were talking about conspiracy theorists going around in circles. I think humanity is kind of doing that. I think that, we've we look at our ancient civilizations, we refer to them, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Hopi, the Native Americans, so forth, that had a clue about some pretty ingenious stuff like the Mayans, let's say, in science and astrology. And then you say, well, why is this timeline so off? Because if 10,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago we were such geniuses, where'd the genius go? And how did it, and where did it go? And, even with certain civilizations that, like the Mayan, who just basically vanished from the planet as if all in one day, and where did they go? This is all stuff that, really great for discussions, and E.T., and how did the pyramids get there? I mean, these are great discussions. And I think part of where we're running into a stone wall, literally, is that our history is all screwed up. What we have been told and what we have been taught is all screwed up. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. So if you're in the here and now in 2014, what do? You're getting bomb blasted with, news and propaganda. It's like a worse than a Hollywood movie. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a UFO. He films footage out in New Orleans and stuff, and Sean Gautreaux is his name. And we were talking the other day, and we were saying it's worse than Hollywood writing, as if anything gets worse than that. No, I'm not trying to sound like putting Hollywood down, but you understand what I'm saying? What they're writing in the press these days, and what the government, this whole thing with McCain and the VA, let's say. And the VA, the vets have been having problems since day one, and then all of a sudden this guy is going to step in, change a law, and right away, immediately, because now he sees the crisis. Oh, really now? Really? It just happened today. Meanwhile, this Bergdahl guy that they, soldier that they just picked up and moved to Germany, this whole game they're playing right now, this whole illusion that they're creating, and then he's the consummate deserter, he's a scapegoat, he's not a hero, yet he is, yet the President of the United States saw fit that we would exchange, 5 of their men for 1 of our men, it's so bad. The writing is so bad. The propaganda is so bad at this point. This is also, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. I can't even read it anymore because your head just goes back and forth. You know what I'm saying? It's whiplash.
Sure, absolutely. I do all the time.
My BS meter's on all the time. In the state of Arizona, there's a new one going on in the last few days. More than 1,000 illegal immigrants, children, were dumped here in the state of Arizona. The feds told Arizona Governor Brewer to prepare for more of them, about 60,000 of them. She doesn't know what's going on. Now they're raising money to try to put homes and food on the table for these people. And we don't know where they're coming from over the border, but they were in Texas, and now they're here, and they're just dumping them off by the boatloads. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, and I'm sitting here going, okay, what is this all about? Well, of course, it goes back to the threat against the governor for passing the immigration law here. See, these people, and when I say these people, these government types, these corporate types, all of it's all linked together, you know what I mean? And this is their little war, and this is their little game, and this is their psychopathic, frickin' casino that they're in. Yet we're all sucked into it, and we all become involved in it one way or the other. And the stories go on and on and on. And you said it. You saw children at the beach today, and you thought to yourself, gosh, do I really want children? Generations have said this. We don't want our children to grow up in a big, bad world. Yet we all have. The inside of this, what is really going on? If indeed humans want to evolve, humans need to pay attention. Humans need to, seriously, it's like I'm so over this type of conversation with so many people. It starts at home. It starts in the center of your own soul. It starts with the way you walk, the way you talk, and what you want, what we want as individuals in our life. It starts in your own backyard. Well, I can say that and preach that out loud till the cows come home. Most people won't get it because they're so trained monkeys, I call it, trained little monkeys. We're so trained by the propaganda that just keep pointing at government and pointing at, the Bilderbergs and pointing at the cabals and pointing at the drug dealers and pointing at the murderers and pointing. It's all their fault. And I think they being, if we're going to use the word they, being the media who is owned by the government, owned by the dictatorship, they're sort of get their hands tied behind their backs. There is no true journalism existing anymore, hardly at all. Not in comparison to, let's say, even in the 60s. The 60s there was true journalism, more of it certainly than there is now. So everyone's got their hands tied behind their back, and the almighty dollar pays for them to do that. And that's the end of that story. We know money controls, money rules. And the propaganda that's spilling out into the streets day in and day out literally has trained all the monkeys. Trained all the little monkeys to do what we say and just keep creating the drama so that we can continue to point at them. And I'm kind of over pointing at them. And look, just like anybody else, I am sick of the proof involved in fracking, let's say, the absolute proof that it is dangerous, and yet our country is going into the next level of the oil and gas revolution. Okay, that's what our country is doing. I don't know if the listeners know this, but we are going to the next level of that. All right? So, it's getting away from us, if you will. All of this stuff is just getting away from us. Chemtrails, you either have people who call you crazy. I've got a friend of mine I've known for 20 years. He thinks I'm absolutely nuts, that there's something going on up there. And with weather modification, all I have to say is that, yes, it's very difficult to discern exactly what's going on up there because I, of late, do not own any jet that can keep up with one of those jets so they can stick a Petri dish outside and grab some of the stuff coming out of the plane. And nobody can. And that is what any reporter on the mainstream side, because I've been interviewed by mainstream reporters, that is the first question they ask. Have you tested it? How the hell can I test this stuff? How can anybody? But patents reveal what's in that fuel. Patents reveal what what they put onto the planes to spray the stuff and whatever, blah, blah. I mean, that's all, again, this is history. It's so old. It's so there. It's out there. Anyone can look it up. X, Y, and Z. The stories get old after a while when you can't really do anything about it. The EPA, we all know, the EPA is not for us. They are not taking care of us. They are not responsible. They're not a responsible government entity. And the voice of the people, and this is really important, in this country anyway, I was taught, and I lived in a time where the voice of the people was important to those who ran this country, and we hire those who run this country, and we pay their salary, those who run this country. And the reason why we do that is because they, in government, are supposed to reflect our wants and needs, our voice. If we have become so complacent because we've gotten in the habit of trained little monkeys of pointing, yes, government is corrupt, I'll give you that. Of course it's corrupt. All right? And we all know what happens in corruption. Look at Rome. Eventually it falls by its own sword.
Yeah, it does. This is a very important point. There's a couple things I wanted to mention. It was funny. Probably about a month or two ago, I was on Mark Passio's website, whatonearthishappening.com. I'd interviewed him a while ago. He was like my most popular guest. And anyways, I downloaded an audio file from him, from his website. It was actually him doing another Blog Talk Radio show with another host. And and he was talking about how he was doing this thing on what's called natural law. And he was basically, it was basically a weekend seminars done like over 4 weeks. And one of his big real conclusions of both him and his students was how deeply mind controlled not only the friends and neighbors, because he'd give homework assignments to his students, the friends and neighbors of his students were, but how also mind controlled they were. That we're like in some kind of a collective trance. And I found that to be very startling, and I think that explains a lot of how we've been so deeply conditioned that even though we see this stuff, we still, just like with fracking increasing, the evidence is overwhelming, or GMOs. These things aren't, it isn't like there's evidence both ways. It's a very one-sided argument if you actually look at the research. That, we've gotten very deeply mind-controlled in this society, and I thought that was a really powerful point.
It is a powerful point. You mentioned GMOs. Again, more propaganda with Monsanto. They're doing damage control now. So they're coming out with organic seeds. And they're going to change the industry now. And they're going to use organic seeds and get, the farmers reimbursed for all the, industry, whatever they had purchased for the other seeds. And now they're going to step up and replace all this, farming equipment, et cetera, with this new equipment and organic seeds. And it's just so not right. And it's not even true. And that is not what Monsanto's doing. But they're playing damage control. And, of course, the Monsanto Protection Act that the president, stuck in there a couple of years ago. And why would a president do such a thing? Well, because the lawsuits are going to be pouring in at some point with farm animals, wildlife even. Wildlife is dying because of GMOs.
I understand
farmers
that.
who have been getting, torn out, just the rugs pulled out from under them. If you go to the Organic Farmers Coalition, you can just read what these farmers have been through for God knows how many years. This isn't anything new. They just stepped up their game. So yeah, we've got some stuff, and there is corruption, no doubt. The idea, though, and even the mind control aspect of it, just watching TV and just having commercials or subliminal messages hit you over and over and over and over again. Yeah, eventually you become numb to it, which is what false flags are all about. And that's what they're used for. Big dramatic events and false flags to just keep people on their toes, in stress mode, in drama mode, distracted, etc. And I don't know how this control has gotten to be so big, but with a little over 7 billion people, there is a counter on my website that tells you how many are in the U.S., how many people are being born every second, and then in the world, with over 7 billion people on the planet being controlled by the 1%. It's an old adage, and it turns out it's pretty true to form. How is that done? And I want to say I kind of figured it out. The question about Nazi Germany, when they did the new documentaries in the last couple of years and really explored with more evidence and photos and things like this, one of the questions was asked, how do you get good people, and this is directly related to Auschwitz, how do you get good people to commit acts of evil? And, of course, if you look into that, it's called conditioning.
Sure.
It's simply conditioning. And if you're conditioned that every day in your life you're getting whiplash from the news, every day there's terrible things going on, not only in the world, in your city, in your neighborhood, under your own roof, at work, you become conditioned to extreme stress, extreme drama, extreme everything.
Sure.
And what do you do with that? I mean, stress is the number one killer, right?
Sure.
So that's what people get disease from, stress. So at the end of the day, I have to look at all of this in my own personal life, as you do as well, and the listeners do, I'm sure of it. Where do I belong? And what do I believe anymore? What can I even possibly believe? And again, it goes back to, you really wanted to delve in. It goes back to self. There are a lot of people right now who believe that the suppression of the fact that there are ETs, that we have a war in our skies, that that our governments know about it, that we're having visitors, the fact that they have suppressed, the very core of our existence. I mean, how did humanity, how do we even have a chance when it'd be like me lying to you for your entire life about who your real mother and father are? And then one day when you're in your 60s, I decide to tell you, remember those people that lived across the street from you? That was your real mother and father. What? What? Okay, so they've gotten themselves into such thick lying over centuries and centuries that at this point, it's hard to imagine any sort of true disclosure, if you will, because they have lied so much, and people of this planet have shown evidence, and now with, all the kinds of cameras and iPhones, people can just click a photo of something that they see in the sky, an anomaly, if you will, and what's happening is that more and more people are becoming witnesses to these events.
Sure. I wanted to raise a couple of points here. They're very well, as obviously, people do talk about there being, what's really behind the power structure. I mean, we have the people that we can see, and then, but they're quite frankly front men and front women, and then we've got what some of them call the shadow people, the people that actually run them deep in the secret societies. And then maybe even further along, we've got, I know that, some people talk about demons and extraterrestrials and so forth, maybe, really ultimately some kind of demonic energy, which is maybe running this planet. But one other point I wanted to make before getting back to that is that the very fact that they have to lie to us shows us our own power. because the people that run this world, they're nothing if not extremely efficient in pursuing their goals. If they need to do this unbelievable amount of lying, and it's actually surreal, the level, if you get right down to it, it shows that we must have the power. Otherwise, why would they bother? So that's one point. And I kind of wanted to explore a little more about, the people behind the people or the entities behind the people or whatever. But I wanted to first comment on just that we must have the real power if they need to deceive us like this.
What's behind, the Wizard of Oz sort of story? Who's behind the president? So who's behind the president? And who's behind that? I think that history, again, true history, bloodlines that you can track and read a whole lot about, I think it's pretty easy to see who's behind the scenes. And then, of course, there are the opinions or those who subscribe to the fact that maybe it's E.T. behind the scenes, and then there's the conflict with that of, there's the good E.T. like the Greys, and then there's, the good E.T.s, and then there's the bad E.T.s like the Greys and so forth, and there's abduction, and there's this, and there's that. And at the end of the day, I think it would be pretty important to just pull the curtain back and really see that the Wizard of Oz is this really, this little guy sitting there with this big megaphone and scaring people day in and day out, yet nothing, powerless, without the belief system of the people.
Sure.
And so, that's pretty common. So who's behind all this? We can name a number of organizations that seem to have control over the money, and the Bilderbergs and the banks, the Chase and the Morgans and all of these entities and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the list just goes on and on and on. The Queen and this and that, blah, blah. I know there are a lot of people who subscribe to the fact that our presidents aren't real presidents anymore. We haven't had a real president since Kennedy, and that these are hired guns to basically do the work of, someone that's higher up or behind them, or, then there's rumors of the Majestic 12, and there's groups and groups and groups and groups and groups of people and scientists, etc., that seem to be, if you look in that direction, if you can even stay calm and read all the information that's available, it's really culminating. It's really shite is hitting the fan, so to speak, because the lie can't keep itself up. And the lie can't keep itself up with the age of information. We are in the information age.
One thing I kind of wanted to go in a little, just kind of looking at this from another level. We are definitely information age, and this is why the information is coming up. But at some level, we have the thing is, we either somehow have created these problems, or we've allowed it to happen to us. The thing is I think it's kind of two schools of thought. Maybe I want to get your opinion on this, but we've either we've created these horrible problems, or we've somehow attracted them. We've allowed people. Even like, say, a David Rockefeller, who I know is not anywhere near the top, but from the people we can see, he's probably pretty far up there. We've allowed these people this tremendous amount of power and control over our lives, and to rob so much of our money. We've allowed this to happen. Haven't we? And if that's the case, then why have we either allowed or created this? What?
Yeah, there's two schools of thought on that as well, because as far as the collective goes. We've been in an abuse cycle with our governments and those who control food, air, water, and housing and clothing. So there has been an abuse cycle. And if anyone knows anything about an abuse cycle, we can use a husband and wife. The husband beats the wife, and then he gets on his hands and knees and he apologizes. He'll never do it again. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I lost my temper, da-da-da-da-da. Then they have what you call the pink bubble, the area of rest where they're all in love and lovey-dovey and so glad to be back, talking again and holding hands until it happens again and again and again. And what happens to the abused woman, and by the way, statistically, conned women and abused women are some of the strongest women that walk the planet. It's very interesting. You can look this up. Statistically wise, because someone who is weaker, a weaker woman, does not have what it takes to stay in the game, on either being conned or abused. So it's quite interesting how this all works. And anybody on the outside can say, well, that abused woman is what? Stupid, eh? What an idiot to go back to that guy. He's a moron. I would never do that, or da, 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 da. Except for the fact that that person or those people who are onlookers to the situation and not emotionally charged in it and not part of that cycle and the symbiosis that goes on between an abused wife and an abuser. And I use abused wife in this scenario because it's only 2% of men who are abused, so I'm just using women, no offense to men.
No, I understand that.
In this scenario, what I'm trying to say or put a point across, eventually if you can get to the woman, get her the help she needs and the psychological help that she's going to need, a new foundation, and for her to understand what has happened to her, she will come to an understanding that eventually, and I've seen this as well, I've seen people get well after abuse. After abuse, you have to kind of dump everything you know, and you have to learn something new. And your wires are crossed, okay? So what you think is good is not good. What you think is a good sign is not a good sign. He smiled at me. That must mean he loves me. No, it doesn't mean he loves me. It doesn't mean that at all, and he hit me again. All right, so in that scenario, if you will, at the end of the day, if you can get the woman the help that she needs, which is psychological, mental, physical, financial help, she will rise above. She will not pick this person again. She will not pick one that's just like him again. Okay? Sure. And then as far as the abuser goes, statistically speaking, very little help for the abuser, by the way. Abusive tend to be people that you can't help. Okay, so you can help one, you can't help the other, right? In that scenario, if you look at us as a collective of people, let's just use the United States. We've been in cycles of abuse, for centuries. We've been in abuse cycles, and then what happens? Let's just use election years. So here it comes again. Everybody's complained about the last president and how bogus he was, and look what he did. He's ruining our country, and those congressmen and those senators, get them out. And then something happens. It's called campaigning. And before you know it, everyone's running to vote for the new guy. And here we go again. Here we go again, because the new guy is telling us everything we want to hear, just like that husband who needs his wife to get her butt back in the house because she left him for the 16th time. Yeah. Okay? Same thing. And then somehow, and maybe it's this, what you're talking about, mind control aspect of this, somehow we're right back in it and going to those polls and voting again and clapping and having parties at our homes and, yay, our guy won. And then
we're back in the abuse cycle.
Within moments, we're back in the same boat.
Okay, Roxy, I want to take a first call and see what this person has to say and see what they think about what we're talking about. Okay?
Sure.
Just a moment. Hello, this is Roger. You're live. Who am I speaking with, please? Hello. Oh, maybe they just want. I guess they just want to listen then. Okay. Do you want to say anything, sir, or ma'am? Okay, well, I guess they didn't want to go live. The thing is, what I was, kind of, talking about is, but the abuse cycle, what I want to look at, because we have to look at our responsibility, how we're creating this, or we're attracting this, or some combination thereof, just like the abusive wife, where she attracted this man into her life, and she was attracted to him, and she got into a relationship with him. Maybe she probably had other choices for men out there, I presume, and she chose for a reason not to be with these other men. So, what I'm saying is, yes, I think we are in an abuse cycle, and right now I think we're kind of at the end of the cycle where it's like we're either going to be, killed, or we're going to, finally break free of it. I mean, we seem to be kind of going to that as you're watching, the build-up of like global martial law, and you're looking at seeming near a crescendo. But, what is our responsibility then? Because we have to start really looking at this issue, and this is something I suppose it's kind of like a subtext of what I wrote is, what is our responsibility because we have to go there so we can really solve these issues.
Well, yes, of course. And, I'm painting a picture. So, if everyone can just sort of follow this picture, and I think that we can all identify with this as well. Again, there are combinations that have gotten us to where we are right now, and you're absolutely right. There is self-expression. But in abuse cycles, what happens is the self-esteem, which is the core of our being that's supposed to grow the older we get, as opposed to get chiseled away down to nothing. So what I hear from people when I talk to many, many people, what I hear over and over again is they feel their voice is not being heard. They feel that no one's paying attention. They feel that they wrote those letters and they signed those petitions. And what is going on? What is going on? Why can't we seem to, make any progress? And they also feel that there's so many places in which they can be involved, anywhere from, abused children, helping, to house animals, let's say. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. People have their sons and daughters in the military. It goes on and on and on and on. So people that I talk to anyway seem to think that there's just this whole variety of assaults. I mean, I think that's a good word, assault. And there are assaults going on our air, on our water, on our intellect, on our spirit, on our esteem, etc. So I think what's happened throughout the years, and I think this is really the last 20 years, I can say I've really seen this happen, where people start to just mind their own business, go to work, stay with their own, hang in their own house, not really get out there and especially in the last few years.
Okay, Roxy?
People are become afraid of people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Roxy, why don't you? I want you to really kind of expand this. I want you to kind of just take the floor for a couple of minutes and just let's really, really expand on our responsibilities, because this is where the solution is going to have to lie. Can you just take the floor for a couple of moments, please?
Oh yeah,
really
no problem.
Okay.
No problem. So, with that in mind, as everything is kind of like, I don't know, a crescendo is coming, I guess, and everybody's waiting for the other shoe to drop and waiting for somebody else to do it, somebody else to do the job in government, in the corporate world. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting because we feel frustrated, and this is what I hear back from people, and the suppression of all this knowledge that is now starting to float to the surface. One I think is very important, a very important issue is, where do we come from, and are there ET flying around the planet all day long, and why aren't we connecting to them? Maybe we're supposed to connect to them. Maybe they're living with us here right now, and we're supposed to connect it. According to Laura Eisenhower, yes, indeed, that's true, the great-granddaughter of Ike Eisenhower. But here's my point for the very, very now. As far as accountability goes, I also see people shedding that. They're not being accountable anymore. They don't want to take accountability for anything anymore. And if we were really going to say, like, what do we change inside of us? What are we going to do? People don't like anyone telling them what to do, which is why I don't. We don't like to be taught anything these days. And we certainly don't like someone saying, here's a roadmap, go ahead, go and do that. Well, I don't want to do that. What if I don't want to do that? So we've got this bickering. Since the age of social media, we see this bickering going on. People are saying, no, that's not right. No, this isn't right. No, that's not right. But at the end of the day, the war is on. It is game on. We are having a spiritual warfare of all dimensions. It's huge on this planet. What can we do? Well, I think that this is part of the scenery. It's part of where we're going. I think that it's kind of like, you don't hear someone until they slap you upside the head, and then you're like, oh, my God, I get it now. Perhaps we are stubborn humanity. Perhaps we are just so stubborn that things do have to unfold and get worse and worse and worse. They're talking about a currency crash in our country. They're talking about currency crashes all over the world. I think American citizens are very scared about a currency crash in our country because we are the dominating currency in the world. I mean, what would that look like to the rest of the world if our currency literally crashed to zero? I have no idea. It wouldn't look good. That's all I know. And the war games that were mentioned earlier on a nuclear war, a third world war. Are we ready for that? No, we're never ready for war. And why would we? We're supposed to be in the modern age, right? What do we do about this? How do we stop this? Well, in the Asian culture, they do not believe in resistance. You don't resist anything. You go with the flow. You go with the flow. So let's just say, and this is where people are probably going to say, oh, my God, she's lost her mind. But what if, and I've said this before, I've shared this before, what if we got back to balance within our own individual life, really did an inventory of our own personal life? What if we started there and said, you know what, I'm going to make a list of things I like and make a list of things I don't like, and I'm going to toss out all the things I don't like. I'm going to start creating the world that I want to live in right here under my own roof, in my little tiny apartment or wherever you live, and you started there and you said, I'm going to create the life I want. Now I'm seeing a lot of people do this. I'm seeing people create the world they want right in their own little tiny, 300 square foot space, okay? Starting there, because they're tired of fighting. They're tired of resisting. They're tired of holding on to the stuff, the stuff, the beamer, the house, the address. You know what I'm saying? They're tired of it, and they're saying, I don't want to do this anymore, and they're getting with like minds. And they call me to tell me what they're doing as of late, like I sold my house, I sold my car, I'm living at a friend's now, and then from here on we're going to do this, and then we're going to go to Tibet, and we're going to do a documentary. I'm like, wow, crazy cool. Okay? Sure. Does everyone have to pick up and do that? No. But back to that accountability, that real, what's going on beneath. It's inside of every single one of us. If we, and see, collectively, believe me, I've been trying to unify people for a long time, and there's a total current that goes against that. There's a current that says, no way, Roxy, you can't do it. No way, Roxy, it'll never happen. No way, it's never happened on this planet. It's not going to happen now. So there's a current pretty much against, most things that we can envision as utopia, let's say.
Sure.
But
there's also some supposedly practical purpose. There's also supposedly practical reason we can't do this and can't do that. But those reasons, if you were to look at them, actually, what they are, their excuses that basically their talking points have come down from on high, from the elites, as a way of keeping us stuck and basically guaranteeing that things will get worse. If you really want to get down to it, because we do have to think about creating our own little worlds and healing ourselves. And I think this, what you're talking about, is where we create our own little worlds and our own little mini paradises, and we heal ourselves, and by healing ourselves, we're helping to heal the world. Because, this is exactly where we do what we can do. We don't worry about the world, but by healing ourselves, we're helping to heal the world.
I agree. I agree with that statement, and I think that is exactly where it begins. I have a question for everyone, and the question is to ask oneself, literally, am I of value? What kind of value do I place on myself? And if your answer isn't exponential, as in I place exponential value on myself, then we need to ask ourselves why. And I think that's where we're going. We have to have value for ourselves. And through all of this rip-roaring, crazy, couple last centuries, right, most people that I talk to don't value themselves. Really, they don't value themselves, their core being, their life, their existence. They don't value it. And that's sad to me. That's really sad to me. What humanity needs at this point is hope, and we can create that hope. I mean, I need hope, you need hope, the listeners need hope, we all need hope. Hope is, it's like what Tina Turner said, what's love got to do with it? We need hope. We've got the love burning in our hearts. We need hope. We need a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Sure. And at this point, we have slid so far off the map, if you want to know the truth. I mean, that's how I feel. I feel that we're backsliding and getting less of what we want and more
Sure.
of what we don't want. And how is that happening? By conditioning, by accepting, by value. We have no self-worth. If you have no self-worth or very little self-worth, how are you going to rule the world? How are you going to even rule, your own roosters in your backyard? It's like
Roxy?
that.
I think this is an important point. If you look at so much of the propaganda that is directed, it's about destroying our self-esteem. There's a war like on self-esteem. If you go look at what they're doing in schools now, if you look at a lot of the conditioning, it's getting us to basically be zombies and have no self-esteem, or our only sense of self-esteem comes from the state. It's like, you did a good job, Roxy. You served the state well today. You told the right lies. You enforced these horrible laws. You did whatever terrible thing we wanted you to do. So now you get a little bit of self-esteem because me, your superior, told you that you're worthy of self-esteem right now, and then I have a so-called superior who do the same thing to me. We have a whole hierarchy basically like that, where they don't want us internally getting our self-esteem and realizing our own internal worth. It's supposed to be totally from the state. It's like I only have value if the state says, or if the elite or whoever says I have value. And this is like with Common Core, where what is 2 + 2 equal? Whatever the teacher says at that moment. And the teacher can say 5, 13, 87, 292. And it changes, but the whole idea is we need to be internally focused, where we're getting our value and our sense of reality from inside of ourselves, rather than from the authority where it just changes on a whim.
I agree with you. This matrix, if you will, it's just a movie. And I know the movie gets really scary sometimes, and it feels really real. But what's really real is, I think, what I think, what I feel, in my own life. I'm not telling everybody think how I think and feel how I feel. I'm saying just for me personally, and my husband and my friends and my colleagues, reaching out and touching them, and having these types, Roger, of conversations that let us all know that we're on the same page.
Sure.
Okay, because it's really a tough world when you go out there and you start talking about anything under the sun. Seriously, most of us are not on the same page. We're shaking our head and we're saying, and then we walk away and we go, what were they talking about? We're not connecting.
Sure. And that's one of the things, to me is very important about like this show and what I'm trying to do and what I am doing. I'm not saying trying, actually I'm doing. I want people to be connected at a deeper level and realize that there are other people that think like them out there. And this is also the real thing. This is the popularity of someone like an Alex Jones or David Icke, where it's like people are realizing that they're not alone, because you get treated like some kind of a freak or something, like there's something wrong with you, because most people don't want to deal with this. As long as their life is comfy right now, they don't want to look at the deeper issues. They don't want to go there. They just want to pretend that everything is okay. But somewhere down the road, the reality of the situation is going to knock on their door, and they're not going to be able to avoid it. So so we have these deeper issues that people need to ultimately be focusing on. And
I get what you're saying, and I'm not talking about one particular area of psychology, let's say, or therapy or any of that. But you got to get what you need. Every one of us, we have to get our needs met, our basic needs met, right? And we can get our basic needs met. And there's a number of ways to do that. I won't get in it. It's all over my website. It doesn't matter. But, the collectivism that's starting to happen is happening in activism. You and I talked about this the other day, Roger. It's like whether you're a chemtrails activist or a GMO activist or an animal rights activist or a human rights activist, whatever it is. What it is, to me, it seems like these are doorways. These are doorways for all of us to step into. And then I notice that when people become, all activist means is you're active. You're proactive in whatever area you choose. That's all it means. An activist, the word activist is getting a freaky connotation these days. Left-wing environmentalists, left-wing this, crazy people, cuckoo crazy people. Well, I'm sorry. There are a lot of cuckoo crazy people out there, and they're not necessarily activism. But, the role of activism collecting others to take action for some type of, positive, hopefully, positive outcome. This is where like minds are starting to meet in the middle and accept one another, and then take a role and a position. That's what Occupy was. A lot of Occupy was about. Creating roles for individuals. You be the cook, you be the person that puts the speeches together every night. You do this, you handle technology, you handle getting our feeds on live stream. It was a collective, effort, right? And really, I was so excited. Seriously, and I'm not afraid to say this. I was so excited when Occupy started out in New York, and I was like, "Yay! It's on, game on!" Because there are so many countries in the world right now that are really game on. They have taken their people to the streets, and they're not leaving the streets until something is done. Brazil's a real good one.
Brazil, Spain. I'm thinking
Brazil is just going cuckoo.
Exactly.
But my point is, and then. What happened? It seems the movement itself got infiltrated, but I got a better one. I think our government turned around and said, you know what? They're in the snow, they're in the heat, they're in the this, they're in the, all the people that were in the streets, and they're in tents, and they're having to live on donated food, and they're not working. Let's just let them be. Every now and then we'll come riding through New York City with horses, and we'll, put some smoke out there and whatever else they sprayed on people. And people will get, some of the people will get scared, some of the activists, and they'll go home. But for the most part, just let them stay out there in the street. They didn't do the exercise of martial law. Even at Zuccotti Park, God, that was a real twist. Like, okay, the guy that owned Zuccotti Park said, no, go ahead and let him stay, even though people were making a mess and everything. Okay, what's the plan here? What's the end game here? And the end game was exactly what happened. Just let them stay in the street, and we'll ignore them.
Yeah. Well, I
and
think
then
that's
they'll go away. And that's exactly what happened.
I know that. One thing I think is happening is that we maybe things have to get worse before they'll get better. There's a saying where I know someone gave the analogy of it's like you have this aircraft carrier, and to turn it around, it can take many miles, because even just to slow it down can take a lot of miles. And so we're in a situation where maybe things have to get a lot worse before they can get better, where enough people wake up and they really stick with things. They just don't, this is kind of inconvenient, and I think I just want to forget about it. I think that's part of what happened there, is that, people were frustrated, but they weren't so frustrated that they were willing just to keep on going. And I know there have been examples where, I think happened in Ireland a number of years ago, and I believe also where was it? Somewhere in Africa, I think, where the people just got so frustrated, they hit a threshold where they just refused to give up. And it was almost like this, we've created this problem, and we let the problem get so bad that finally we have to do something, and we just stick with it until the problem is solved. Maybe that's where we need to go to.
Well, you said something earlier that I'd like to bring back up,
Sure.
Where your example was, you did a good job, and so you get the benefits of that good job that you just did, but then I can lift you up, the powers that be, so to speak. I can lift you up, and then I can put you right back down. And I can lift you up, and then I can put you right back down. That form of they dictate to me or you what our worth is. And you were giving a really clear example of that. And just like, I'm going to bring into focus here this thing that's going on, this debacle with the Veterans Administration, and all of these war vets that were turned away and died and so forth. What the government is doing right now is, because a coalition formed a couple of years ago, and the sons and daughters and relatives, let's say, of those who passed away because they couldn't get the medical care they needed, decided to form a coalition and not stop until they got the job done. I do find it very interesting, however, that with little effort in comparison to other major things that are going on this planet, with little effort, got the attention of the United States Senate and the president, okay, with a whistleblower apparently that was on the inside. You know, for anybody who doesn't know, they gave the list of all these individuals who had been trying to schedule appointments for 2-3 years and could never get their appointments met. A whistleblower handed over the list, and the next thing you know, they were coming under the gun. Well, it all appears to be that way now, doesn't it? And it all appears to be a concern at this time, doesn't it? And to have McCain step up and say, look, we're going to pass a law, it all appears that with little effort, they got the job done. With little effort. And that is a lie. And this is a game. And this is a twist. And this is not victory at all. Because something's coming right around that corner. And if anybody thinks differently, oh, my God. That's all I have to say about that. Oh, my God.
Sure.
Because this is just a game. And it also came on the heels of this soldier, Bergdahl. It comes on the heels, of that story, of getting this guy out of, POW camp, so to speak, and getting him rescued, getting him out because he was getting very sickly. What about all the other guys that are sick? Why is this guy so important? So the movie scripts that they are writing these days are getting very sad and easy to see through. They're getting more and more transparent. I am sure of it, because it makes no sense that Senator McCain could really step up and know, oh my gosh, a few days present a law that is now going to formally and forever moving forward take care of our vets, even with private medical care. If the VA is too understaffed and too many clients, they'll even get privatized now. The vets will get private medical care. Okay, wait a minute. Back up the train. What is this all about? Why are they doing it? What's happening? And it's not because the people of this country are in the streets over this, and making a really big ordeal. It's sort of a short window right now. And how did this go from A to Z so quickly? You have to ask oneself, because they're up to something. They're up to something. And I think you nailed it when you talked about a possibility, of a threat of a third world war. But there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture than that. I am firmly grounded in this. We are, and have been for I don't know how long, we are at war with another species as well.
That make a lot of sense. One of the things is just really expanding upon that idea of we being at war with another species. And obviously you're familiar with some work where they talk about, like, say, the reptilian species, and they talk about that we're secretly being run by them, and that the elites are actually hybrids. And I'm sure you're quite familiar with this. And like the reptilians and the Greys were being at war with them. I suppose a real question is we have the issue that why us? Why did we somehow create them? I mean, for example, one of the things I've been doing a lot of reading about, and I had interviewed this guy Tobias Lars, and we talked about this, was if we ultimately didn't create these problems through our own collective shadow self, and maybe these reptilians and Greys or whatever are like projections of those problems, because at a deeper level, this world is if you look at the mystics, they talk about this world being a thought or thoughts or a system of thoughts. And if somehow, we didn't create this problem, or we didn't somehow attract it, even if they are separate, totally entities from us, we didn't attract it. I mean, what kind of responsibility do we have there? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. And yes, we do have a responsibility. And I think it goes back to the singularity first. I mean, before we go entering into the conscious thoughts and the massive amount of information that's floating around the universe, I think it always will start with self. And we're connected anyway. See, whether you want to be connected to the macro and the micro, story. If you want to be connected to everything around you, you've got to be connected. You got to start with self. You got to have a connection with yourself. You got to be able to use your own personal talents. Your gut tells you everything. Why are we ignoring our gut? Why are they putting up people on enormous amounts of drugs? Why are the pharmaceuticals just hand over fist handing out drugs like candy? We've got to step back. We've got to step back away from this and forget for a moment. Okay, I don't mean just forgive all of these entities, but as far as the attraction goes, it is possible. I think it is very possible that, being that we're all creators, it's very possible that we've created a scenario or many scenarios like this of the ETs, etc. We've created it because we need to, because we are expanding. We are expanding outside. If you look at the Earth, first you had, tribes that lived in certain areas, and until they had a boat or some way to traverse the Earth via water, there was no way to really expand and conquer. And once there was a boat or a ship, then they could leave one area and go to another continent, et cetera, and check that out and see what was going on there and everything. And so forth and so forth. And then before you knew it, we had airplanes, aviation. And the next thing you know, we're going into outer space. This is what we're doing. We are growing, and now we are expanding its consciousness. We don't have to be at Alpha Centauri. We can just meditate and be there. We're starting to learn these tricks of the trade, so to speak, the evolution of our own species again. We're starting to learn that there's many dimensions. There's not just one, that there are dimensions outside of ourselves. And then there is a collective resource of information as well, and it's called going inside oneself. And that's why, a lot of the ancients taught and shared meditation, to think, to sit with oneself and take in what you can take in, or sit by a river and watch it roll by, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These things actually really work, and as we expand, something else seems to be contracting. And I'm not just saying that. Something else seems to be tightening the noose around us. Yeah, and it's possible that what we created was that the way in which we're going to expand is to bust loose. And many that I have talked to talk about, the possibility of a revolution in our country being we all intended that it would be a peaceful revolution. Yet, maybe, perhaps, is it possible that we could have a peaceful revolution? It's kind of an oxymoron, if you ask me, but could we? Could we have a peaceful revolution where we can make the changes? But the changes come from within, and sharing the knowledge. And that's what you see a lot of, Roger. I'm sure you have every one of your shows. You see a lot of people who have to focus on an area and then share their information with the whole world, because we have the ability to do that today. And that sharing could actually be accelerating the planet.
Yeah, that could be. I think that's a very good point. A couple things, and I actually want to mention some things from when we talked offline a few days ago. I was mentioning that this Tony Robbins interview, or he was saying about that the word problem actually means to throw forth, and he asked, well, who is doing the throwing? And, the implication being that we're doing the throwing, where we're like creating these problems so we can solve them and then grow into the beings that we're meant to be, perhaps. Because I'm wondering, because I'm looking at this world, like at a macro level, how things are getting more crazy by the day, and without going into it, but knocking sucked into that, where we've created these unbelievable problems, maybe through our collective shadow self, maybe because I've noticed that as I've studied this conspiracy stuff, the depth of the evil is surreal, and I'm wondering, am I just looking at my own unprocessed stuff? Is this basically I'm not going to use any swear words on thing, but our own fecal material, our own psychological fecal material? We create these horrible problems so we can solve them and burst through them, become a greater beings.
I mean, I suppose that's possible. I think that anything's possible. I mean, it's a good thought to have. If I can back up a moment, though, we have been taught some real useless stuff, like there's a beginning and an end. Okay, we've been taught that everything's linear. There's a beginning and an end to everything. All right, we've been taught to live inside of that box, that we start here and then we end here. So part of that, think about that when you're goal seeking. You talk to any intelligent successful individual, they don't see life like that. They don't see beginning and end. They see a circle, a big circle, a process, and it just progresses forward. The process is progression, 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 progression. So I think some of the stuff that's maybe embedded in religion, et cetera, some of the things that we've been taught that, if we do this and we do that, then we're going to go to this place called heaven. When we die here, it will be the end, and then we go to this place called heaven. And if we're very bad people, we go to this place and we're, banished to these the flaming fires of hell. The fact of the matter is, I also think that because the timelines are coming together, and that's a very important aspect of this, the timeline, alternative timelines, alternate timelines are coming together at an intersection, hence some of the confusion. And therefore, the process, it seems like we're not hinged on the process, that the process is now, that everything is happening right now, that this is always has been and always will be. The illusion is that this is all something new, and it's not. It's not.
What do you mean?
And well, that, like the culmination of wars or, the end game or none of this is new. The part that I think that might be that we are on the brink of is one and only thing. We are due a quantum leap. And so it's very possible we're at a tipping point. And as you well put it, that we created like all these cycles and all these problems and all these and we're going to get hit by an asteroid on Tuesday, or the world's going to end December 21st, 2012, or this and that. We create these catastrophes, these fear, that creates more fear and more fear and more fear. And it's very possible that we are indulging in this simply to have some sort of crescendo happen, some sort of peak happen, which I refer to as the tipping point. Once X amount of individuals slip over the edge, so to speak, the rest follow. You know what I mean? It just all kind of goes. It's like a glass of water. You can put a glass of water in a sink and put water dripping on it, on the glass of water to fill it up very slowly. And it's only going to take one drop. The one drop that hits the very top, and then the glass actually over spills. It doesn't spill over one drop. It spills over quite a few drops, just like a pool, if you've ever seen a pool overflow. It's the one drop that makes the whole thing go over, which is what is called a tipping point. I think we're approaching a tipping point. And I want to use the word masquerade. The masquerading that we've been doing, all of us collectively, people tell me, I don't masquerade, I'm who I am, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But you do have your own private thoughts, and do you ever think bad thoughts about other people? Well, yeah. Do you ever tell them that you're thinking bad thoughts about them? Well, no. Well, that's masquerading. It's like we are in the age of transparency. We're in the information age. We're in a lot of big ages right now, the age of technology, the space age. I mean, bam, 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 bam. We're getting hammered by our own evolution. And I don't know that when we experience a quantum leap, historically, perhaps we have had one on the planet. Those refer to the landing on the moon as a quantum leap for mankind. It's possible that that's what it was. I mean, we got off planet, supposedly, if we really did. That would have been a quantum leap. But if we were going to experience a quantum leap on this planet in our own evolution and doing it the way we do it, I guess, being that we've never done it before, we don't know what we're doing. If we do that, I don't know what the other side of that looks, because just like when you look at your life and you look at every day that's gone by since the day you can remember to now, everything evolved over time. Everything was a process. Nothing really happened overnight. Very little. A pregnant woman gives birth, and that kind of happened overnight. I mean, she had it for 9 months in her tummy, so to speak. But the moment that she goes into any kind of pain, the labor process begins, and then it does seem that in a moment a child is born. So it's a pretty miraculous event. But I'm saying for the most part, nothing really happens overnight.
Yeah, well,
it's a methodical
there's a gradual
process.
trend. What happens is actually that's a good example. There's usually a gradual transition, and then there can be at some points like an inflection point where things rapidly change, where there's suddenly you have a discontinuity, where that can happen very rapidly, where things can build up, like you're talking about, like the tipping point with the water, and maybe that's what we're going towards, because we seem to be locked in, and I don't like using these words, but I have to use the language. A battle between good and evil, for want of a better term, a spiritual warfare, a conflict. Like I said, I'm not really, because I think really calling them good and evil, good and bad, in some ways isn't really quite correct, because maybe what we call evil is what we need for us to grow. It's kind of like you go to a gym and you're working out, and you can say, well, the weights are bad. Well, no, the weights, it's pushing against those weights that gives you muscles. Where it's like we have the forces of say, de-evolution, the forces of spiritual contraction, the forces of because we seem to be at war against consciousness right now, and those are the forces of regression versus the forces of progression. And I don't mean that in like a Democrat terminology, but we seem to be going through that at a deep level. And maybe, this is what needs to happen to go to the next level, as opposed to even calling it evil, not using a value judgment, but it's like this is just the process. We need the resistance to grow the muscle. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, yes. In the context in which you mentioned, yes, of course, yes. You would have to have that sort of mechanical resistance for sure. And it's very possible that we are creating, as you mentioned early on, and we've talked about this before, we're creating the experience on the collective. And, from where I'm standing, it's and it's a hard conversation to have.
I understand. That's why we need to have it.
It's a hard conversation to have with anybody, because, for instance, years ago, a good friend of mine got cancer for like the 7th time, and we tried to have this conversation about why do you think you're creating this? She got very, very offended. I'm a victim. I'm a victim of cancer. I did not create it. It's a very hard conversation to have.
Sure.
Especially with people with ailments, because why would anybody wish the worst on themselves? And there's the irony of this is what you focus on. What do we focus on? This has come up over and over and over again, that we have to start now learning how to focus our thoughts, keep our eye on that carrot, you know what I'm saying? Keep our eye on that goal and focus on that, and really sort of get away from all that negative stuff that we do. Ironically, my grandmother used to talk all her life about what she didn't want when she died. She wanted to go to bed one night and die in her sleep. But she would say, I don't want to die of cancer, and I don't want to die of a stroke. Oh, God, that would be the worst thing ever. If I died of a stroke, I'd have to, I'd be in bed for years before I actually died. That would be hell. And she'd talk about all the things that she didn't want to die of, literally. Jeez. And then she had a stroke one day. Well. And she was in the bed for 5 years. And it was like me as the granddaughter knew more than anyone else. When I would go and visit her, tears would come down her face. She couldn't talk anymore because she knew that I'd listened to her all my life say those words. I don't want. And here was the realization. Is this why it happened? I don't know, but I'm saying the focus, our focus, it's not going to hurt anything or anybody to recalculate our focus.
Yeah.
Okay,
Roxy,
and get back down to the basics.
Sure. No, I understand. When you said that, I actually winced because both my mother and grandmother, my mother's mother, died of strokes. And they're both bedridden. My mother, I think I told you, for the last 13 months of her life was a series of hospitals and nursing homes. And she actually finally died of a heart attack, but it was a stroke that got her into the whole housing, nursing home and housing home system. And I've done several shows about that. I mentioned that, like with Rebecca Carley and Marty Oakley and this guy Ken Ditkowski when talking about the whole elder abuse issue. And people might want to check those out if they got elderly parents or grandparents. But the whole thing where you create what you don't want because you focus on it. Like I said, I mean, I can very definitely relate to that with like I said, with not one but two generations. So yes, I mean we have to be very careful of our thoughts becoming reality. And this is why we want to focus on what we want, although at the same time
that we create,
exactly.
We create. They say thoughts are things.
Absolutely.
So we create with those thoughts. And at
Sure.
the same time, we must be expanding. We've got to be expanding. Because
sure, grow or die.
We're expanding. Because there are we're creating the technology now to be able to film these ships in the sky. And I've got to say, there are some photos that, and Jim Kerr, you're going to be having him on the show, right?
Yeah, in 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and
in
next
2
week
weeks.
Patrick Jordan.
People got to tune into that show. His work, some of his work, entails, some photos, some photography. I don't know if anybody knows, but, he's an ex-cop, detective, all the rest of it. And he started filming the skies. And he's getting some unbelievable anomalies. And ironically, the same anomalies that Sean Gautreaux in New Orleans is getting as well. And so you go figure, right? And then there's Wilbur Allen in Washington, D.C., who has got a camera on his roof. He lives 6 blocks from the White House, and every single night, like clockwork, the same time, mind you, the same time every night, he's picking up the same kind of stuff.
Isn't that interesting?
Cameras. It is interesting. And, in deep thought conversations with all of them, we've come to realize these things are everywhere. Is what it is. They're not just in New Orleans, Washington, D.C.
No, they're everywhere. I'm not surprised.
Northern California. So where are we going with all this? Like, and what's the suppression all about? And how do we break through? Well, the good news is that with the technology at our hands these days, and with the ability to communicate to the whole world, I mean, that's the good news about Facebook. I can communicate with people all over the world for free. Okay, I can chat with them in private chat rooms, and we're instant communication. So again, back to the beginning, we are becoming part of, without knowing it, by osmosis, really, a part of 7 billion witnesses to what has happened, and it's revealing the present. The present is revealing our past. By indulging in this stuff that's going on right now in our skies, in our government, everywhere. What we're documenting at this point also just happens to be opening doors to our history.
Sure.
As well.
That makes sense.
And you know what I'm saying? And so with that in mind, moving forward, I mean, it's okay, man, to be angry about being lied to. It's okay to show that or exhibit that emotion. I say exhibit an emotion rather than not, but don't hold on to it forever and ever and ever either, and believe me, we are all traversing these crazy energies. I mean, really, between our planet and the moon and Mars, we're going through some crazy energies, crazy cool energies, but it's really wreaking havoc on a lot of very sensitive people. And ironically, it's the sensitive people who actually know what to do because they're sensitive, and they start, sharing what to do when you're starting to feel X, Y, and Z as well.
Okay,
and then there's the other group of individuals, Roger, just 1 second, that view these photos, of Wilbur Allen's work, of Sean Gautreaux's work, of Jim Kerr's work, and they'll actually say, okay, that's not a ship. I mean, they're looking for the 3D ship. They're looking for the ship that lands in their backyard, and some type of alien being walks out and shakes their hand. And we're not there. We're past that zone now.
Okay. We have a caller, and I want to get him or her and get their opinion, see what's going on with them. Because there are a couple of points I actually wanted to bring up. I wanted to, first of all, bring in someone just to see what they have to say. Hello, this is Roger. Welcome to the show. Who am I speaking with, please?
Oh, hi, Roger. This is Jim Kerr, friend of Roxy's.
Oh, hi, Jim. How are you doing? It's funny. She was just talking about you. Oh, I'm doing really good. Do you have a comment, or do you just want to listen to the show?
Well, I just wanted to say that, in support of Roxy, she is just, one of the most awesome people I've ever met. And when we talk about, I just basically want to make a statement. It's just, there's so much happening on our planet, and Roxy, she pretty much covers it all. It's amazing how much she covers, and how knowledgeable she is on so many different topics. And she's absolutely right. This is a collective effort on everybody's part. Once somebody gets awake to what's happening, there's a list of different topics that they could get involved in, whatever their passion is, whatever they feel passionate about, and start spreading the word, start spreading information, and just basically calling in for support.
Good. We really appreciate that. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think people need to focus on what they're passionate about. I remember where I used to work, there was this guy who had a little community garden he had started behind a Salvation Army. And basically there are probably about 20 families that are being fed out of this garden. And they had these little plots, and it was just most wonderful. I mean, here you're in this, so-called blighted, supposed ghetto, Latin ghetto in downtown L.A., and yet because one man who I met and got a chance to talk to for an hour had a passion to bring fresh food into this poor area of Los Angeles, there was a beautiful garden there, a place you'd never would expect there to be one. In fact, there was actually a whole series of gardens because each family had their own little plot. And I think that's very important, that people do what they got passion for. And,
exactly.
and whether it's something like this or whether it's filming the night sky or whatever, or like, building a community garden like that gentleman did. I think that's very important. One thing I wanted to mention to you, Roxy, was that you're probably familiar with the work of Deepak Chopra, and he talks about how someone would say liver cancer, if you look at it a year later, every single atom in that liver cancer has changed over, I think, 6 times or 8 or whatever it is. I don't know the exact number. But the point is we're constantly recreating our reality by the second. It's just that what's happening is the liver cancer itself, the actual atoms, which themselves are changing, by the way, and even ignoring that, we're constantly, like you're talking about people with the health problems, we're constantly recreating our reality second by second. And, I went to this discussion, they're talking about cellular memory, where it's because we have the memory, we're doing the same patterns, or we're creating the same patterns over and over. We don't realize that we're just creating the same things again and again. And I think this is something that we really need to be aware of, is that what we have is a choice. We're constantly creating this reality. And just to, even like the liver cancer example, and just like with the people where they can create different realities, and this is how, these miraculous cures sometimes occur.
True. And ironically, is Jim still on the line?
Yes, he is. I just put him on mute, but do you want to talk to him?
Oh, gotcha. I don't know if Jim's going to share a story on your show, but he should talk about that. I mean, Jim is somebody that, yet another warrior out there, as my friend Howard Stein, that conquered that very thing through the mind.
Because
Jim as well had cancer.
Jim, do you want to share the story?
Sure.
Jim, I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to say anything, but
I'm sorry.
It's amazing what you did, Jim.
It's a testimony, and it should be shared.
It is.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with, actually it started for me back in 2006. I was diagnosed with a melanoma on my neck, and they caught it in time. They took it off, and I went in every year to be checked. Well, I went in here probably about 2 months ago, and they took a look at one of my arm, and the doctor says, this is bad. So they took it off, tested it. Make a long story short, it had metastasized, and it was on my right forearm, and it actually went into my lymph nodes, and they didn't know how far it went. So they did a bunch of tests, 3 different body scans and that. But, I absolutely knew that I was going to be healed. In fact, Roxy and I had a long conversation about it. And, for me, it was more than like a self-healing thing. Being a Christian and firmly believing, in the God of the Bible. I knew I was going to be healed. I had no ands, ifs or buts about it. I knew I was going to be healed. So I went through the surgery. They pulled out some lymph nodes, my right arm, under my right armpit, and I'm still healing up from that. And all the test results came back. The doctor said 100%. We got it all. We got it in time before it spread to the rest of your body. And I'll tell you, for me, I give all the glory to the Lord. On that.
Awesome.
But
you're a perfect example, Jim. Though your attitude and and the belief system that you have created for yourself, because it's your belief system. Your attitude throughout this was, and I really want people to know about this. Your attitude was amazing. I was like, "Aren't you freaking out?" I'd be freaking out. You were like, "No, I'm going to survive. I'm going to heal this. I'm going to get rid of this." And then of course he came back and said 100% cancer free, as Howard Stein. Howard did it a different way than Jim did it. And I want to point something out, and not to the embarrassment of anyone on this show or listening. I want to point something out. Jim we have had religious discussions. I am not of the faith that Jim is, but I have the same sorts of ideas or ideals. And this is a perfect example, again, of a person in my life, Jim Kerr, who accepts me for who I am. I accept him for who he is, and we do not argue about our belief systems. We simply accept them. Another perfect example in the past of how religion has separated people, and in the open-mindedness that we have, Jim and I, and Roger, you and I have the same. It keeps us together, moving in the right direction. Wouldn't you agree with that, Jim?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, Jim.
Absolutely. 100%. I agree with that. And I have never, in my entire life, I've never, argued with somebody on their beliefs. Because, and like you said, we're all moving in that same direction. And you start to let religion, I'll use the word quote religion, get involved. How many wars have there been over religion?
Right.
But no, you're.
I didn't want to think about that. No, that's an excellent point. And the thing is, we all got our own individual paths, and but we all have the same basic ideas and ideals, but we're all on our own separate paths, and that's extremely important. I appreciate you bringing it up, Roxy, and also I appreciate you for sharing that story, Jim, because what I want people to understand is this: what Deepak Chopra is talking about is a really profound idea. We're constantly creating this reality. And, the reason we have this reality is because we're creating it, and we're constantly recreating it, just like the liver cancer, and just like where you see people with these miraculous healings. And this is why I would never, whatever someone believes, I never argue with them on their belief, because their belief can produce that reality. I mean, it's like when people go to Lourdes, France, and, and they partake of the water, and some people do have miraculous cures. And, and not getting all the science behind it or whatever, but what they did was somehow it caused them to create a new reality for themselves. And that we need to understand that we're creating this reality, and we can create a different reality. And just like the cancer cells that are constantly, they're changing by the second. We're constantly creating this reality, and that was my real point. And I really appreciate you sharing that, Jim. Is there anything you want to add, Roxy? I'm sorry, Jim?
That should do it. I should probably get off the line and let you get back to Roxy.
Okay, that's fine. I'll put you on hold, Jim, and we'll just go back to Roxy. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. You have a good day.
Okay.
Thanks for calling in, Jim. Really, I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Again, see, this is, and I love what you're setting up as well, Roger, and going into deeper discussions that at first are very fiery and very, thrust forward with passion and so forth. But then when we get into the deeper layers, which look really scary, nobody wants to go deep and deeper and deeper because, I don't know, because it's dark in there maybe. But shedding light in the dark is where it's at. Shedding light on just about anything is where it's at. And then the actual ability And I really, I've had people in my life that I had to let go of. I just couldn't get down with some of the stuff that was happening, and I let go. I let go of my radio show. I let go of a lot of things. I let go because it wasn't feeling good anymore. It wasn't right. It wasn't happening, and I was in charge of my own happiness. And it wasn't making me happy anymore. And those who are listeners, longtime listeners, they know that. They were part of that. They were following that. They knew they knew that crisis was coming. And in crisis, as we all know, there is opportunity.
Yeah, well, the Chinese word danger and opportunity are the same. And
that's right.
That's very true. One thing I also
so
wanted
in that
to say
opportunity, oh, by the way, I have to say this too, Roger. I have to let the listeners know that I have not been interviewed by a host in probably well over a year, and I haven't been on radio since November of 2013. So I have been asked to be on many shows, just didn't feel right, and I want the audience to know that when you called me, Roger, our discussion, our talk, our openness, your openness, I said, sure, I'll do the show. Yes. And so I'm really glad that this is I'm honored that we could get together on this show today. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Roxy. I really appreciate you being on the show. And I wanted to also make because I've been really very, very excited about this, and just your genuineness and just your passion, your commitment. And like I said, to me, one of the things I try to do is interview people who are also role models to me to a certain extent. For example, Lennon Honor is a very good family man, and he's someone I can inspire to in a certain sense. I look at like a Mark Passio, and I can relate to a lot of the work that he has done and, the work that you've done. That's one of the things I'm doing is I'm kind of finding people who be mentors to a certain extent. The other thing I wanted to mention is that when we go further and further down into the darkness, there's a point where sometimes it goes back into light. It's like it's darkest before the dawn. It's like, maybe we're in the society where things are going to get maybe perhaps a lot darker over the next few years. I hope that isn't true, but maybe it has to so we can go to a far greater degree of lightness on the other side of it. And, so sometimes it's like, I know that kind of drove you crazy when I talked about all the work of David Icke. And you mentioned I used his name too many times. And you got a valid point there, but if you go far enough down into his work, it's actually very redeeming and very, he talks about us being infinite consciousness and, being eternal and this being an experience. It's actually uplifting, but you've got to go through so much darkness to get there. And, I'm one of the people that actually did that. I mean, because as I told you, I spent a lot of time where I was kind of a David Icke J, but, be that as it may, that people also have to understand if they hold on and go through the darkness and go through the difficulties, that things ultimately do get better. It's like, someone like you have this woman who say is abused, and, maybe she gets counseling and she starts seeing the patterns, and she becomes so much better of a human being. She becomes so much stronger, so much more loving of a mother. She grows so much as a human being from this experience that, you see, that it isn't darkness all the way down. It's darkness a long way down, but there's a point where it turns to light and then even to greater light. And that's something I want to say because especially if the next few years do get worse, and I suspect they will, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train.
Right. Right. No, that's a great point. And again, that goes back to the individual. What do you want to create for yourself? Because again, we're well, I was going to mention something earlier, and then we went down the rabbit hole. And this is what I was going to say about the whole idea of what do we do and what's really going on type of thing, or what do we do? And I had an idea one day, and the idea actually it really goes against the grain of the work that I do. It goes completely the opposite direction of the work I do, which is putting information out there day in and day out, right? And making people aware of, the atrocities, if you will. And one day I had a thought that what if, as the government does, ignores the voice of the people, just pretends we don't even exist anymore. I think a lot of people are feeling that on many, many different levels, as if we don't exist. Like they're having their own party over there. And that's what it is, over there. And we view them on camera when they do their press releases, et cetera, but they're over there. They're not with us. They're over there, all right? And I thought, what if we, the people, oh boy, did I get a lot of flack for this one. But I thought, what if we, the people, did the same thing? What if we, the people, started to ignore what they're doing? Because if this is a propaganda scheme, and this is just a fear tactic to control the masses, which I really think it is, all of it, I mean, they're having a lot of fun over there, you know, in Washington, Hollywood, script writing. You know what I mean? Day in and day out. This is getting fun, you know.
Yeah.
Look at the people run. Look at the people freak, you know.
Yeah.
What if
what would
we
they do if we
decided
just ignored
not
them?
to buy
exactly.
any of it?
Yeah.
What if we decided not to even put up a white flag, anything? What if we decided to just not fall for it anymore? Now I say, I got a lot of flack for this because people said, you know, oh my God, you have to stand for what you believe in. You can't, you know, what about everything you've ever said? I said, it's just an idea. It's just an idea. What if we, and here's the methodology that is coming from inside my heart and my mind with this, is that by not resisting them, by ignoring them, because if it is just a Hollywood movie, then I'm going to start treating it like a Hollywood movie. And by the way, a lot of people are.
I know a lot of people treat politics as entertainment, sure.
And if that is, and then I can just focus on myself and my family and my friends and my community and, you know, branch out into my state or what have you, or the whole world, my friends all over the world, this and that. What if I focused on that and just said, that's just a Hollywood movie and I'm going to turn it off now? Wouldn't that part of that effort really be not giving them the energy that they're using off of me to keep doing what they're doing?
Exactly.
The collective energy that they're pulling out of us.
They need to parasitize us. They need us. We don't need them. They need our money. They need our energy. They need our brain power. They need our muscle power. But we don't need them. It's
our
like
drama,
the relationship.
our fear.
Sure.
Our fear feeds the wheel.
Exactly. It's a relationship between a dog and a flea on the dog. And that's probably a pretty good metaphor if you think about it in terms of size. Where the flea needs the dog. Does the dog need the flea?
Right.
You know?
Well, exactly.
And this is
they
something
need us because we power their machines. We power their war machines. We power their everything, their thoughts, their everything. Sure. They do get this from us. They get it from and fear is the biggest control factor.
Sure.
So what if we turned them off like a movie and we walked out and said, that's a bad movie and I don't want to watch it anymore? What if we did that, spent the energy on something different, more positive?
Yeah, well, the thing is actually, it's funny because I like that. I like that a lot. And I remember in the Matrix movies, the Matrix was powered by the fear. And by people's fear, by people's negative emotions, and I know this is an idea that's been explored a lot. Where if we're in a matrix, it's actually being powered by our so-called disempowering emotions: our fear, our anger, our anxiety, our resentment, our guilt, and our shame, etc. One thing also I was thinking about what we should do. One thing is oftentimes I started. Sometimes I have a lot of profound observations, which actually start with a popular song. And when you were talking about what we should do, I suddenly heard the lyrics to a song from a group called Roxette, ironically enough, called "Listen to Your Heart." And
I remember that song. I remember the group too.
Exactly, and the thing is, but where it's like, what should you do? Listen to your heart. And and it's like, I was like, another group was Wilson Phillips, and their song was "Hold On," and they're talking about. You got no one to blame for your unhappiness. You got yourself into this mess, and then they're saying, are you comfortable with the pain? And those lyrics really stuck out in my mind. And I'd heard that song in years, and yet it's like the information is there when you need it. If you trust that it will be there, if you instinctively trust that, because I found so many times, like I mentioned when we talked offline, that quote that we're punished by our sins, not for our sins. And I thought that was very powerful. And I don't remember for the life of me where I even heard it. I read in a book on probably Oriental philosophy 30 years ago or something. I have no idea. But it's like suddenly that information is there the second I need it, the instant I need it. Or just like that thing from that thing Rock said. I haven't heard that song probably in 10 years.
And it just pops in your head when you need it.
And the thing is, and to trust the process, and this is a very important thing, mentioning, a very important thing is that we trust the process. And what this is this can be an opportunity for us to have a great healing, or it can be, it's like we're at a fork in the road, and I think we're moving. I don't believe we're going through this for nothing. If we were going to a pure Orwellian tyranny and World War III and nuclear war and all this insane stuff that is being planned, why have this great awakening? I mean, it seems like it'd be such a waste. I mean, I think that we're going through a great cleansing where it's just like if you're cleansing, all kinds of unpleasant stuff is physically coming up, maybe orally or anally or whatever. But maybe that's what we're going through. I think
something's right around the corner, because one of the things that is happening more than ever is, and we talked about this, are sightings, UFO sightings, happening more than ever, getting captured more than ever all over the world. And it seems that there is a history with mass sightings associated with nuclear, anything nuclear. And so it is very possible, like I love what you said about the great away, the healing, the possible healing. I think that, again, with the sightings and all that is going on, people are it's one of the reasons why people come to the truth tonight. Now it's just they're looking after it's flavor of the month, so to speak. UFO this, UFO that. I mean, people are just getting crazy about UFOs because they're seeing them everywhere. And again, if this is what they're planning, and now we're having mass visitation, okay, because they want to either preempt, as they did another time in our not-too-distant history, where there were tons of sightings, and basically the sightings were associated with nuclear plants being shut down by themselves. Yeah,
really?
By
I've heard that the aliens can shut off nuclear power.
Went offline by themselves.
Sure.
And it was associated with these ships in the sky as well. And so it's very possible that we do have and create the intervention that we need. I used to say, nobody's going to come and save us. That's so biblical, no one's going to come and save us. We got to save ourselves and da-da-da-da. But is it possible that we're also creating that intervention? We're creating that. Okay? So if anything goes and we can create what we need and we want, I mean, gosh, 40 years ago, there were no other solar systems out there that we knew of. Now there's billions of them with planets like Earth, okay?
Sure.
So are we creating this as we go? Are we creating the neighborhood now in our, outside of our solar system? Are we creating the expansion of how to get there and what to do? And maybe we don't have good photos of the moon and Mars with all the rovers that have been up there and taking exquisite photos, but not of the stuff that we need to say. Perhaps we had another civilization on Mars that seems to be pointing in the right direction as well, and that's part of our history. So what if the combination of the technology, the tipping point that we're at as humanity, the wars, the talk of wars, the end times, the not so end times, but we are in this sort of mayhem and acceleration, and most people can definitely feel that acceleration, and time is evaporating day in and day out, and where did it go, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What if, you're right, Roger, what if we're creating all these events simply so that we can jump off the edge finally and move on to our next stage in our development?
Yeah, that could be. It's a very real possibility. I wanted to mention a couple things. First of all, I mentioned a bachelor's in physics, and one of the things is I remember, like I mentioned, like the Higgs boson, which is this particle that supposedly, they said, well, does it exist? Does it not exist? And then finally they, find proof that it exists, and where it's like we're wondering, are we creating these quantum particles? It's like they keep on finding new particles. Seems like forever and a day. They must have hundreds at this point. are we simply creating them in those labs? And and this is a very important point. Are we simply creating this reality as we're going along? One thing also, I remember when Laura Magdalene Eisenhower on the show, and she was talking about being a whistleblower with Mars. At the time, I thought, this is crazy. I kind of just let it slide because I'm trying to be polite to my guest. But maybe she was onto something there. I don't know, but I remember her talking about that. One other point I wanted to mention.
The jump room and Andrew Basiago's work and all of that. Yeah,
I actually want to interview Andrew Basiago. I've tried to reach out to him. I need to follow up on Basiago too. Actually, there's a lot of people I need to get back to. I've just been so busy. But the thing is, the other thing is, there was this movie. Did you ever see the movie Dark City?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, basically in the movie Dark City, you've got this city where it's perpetually nighttime. And the people are actually in a test tube, and what's going on is one of them wakes up and realizes that their reality is being controlled by these satanic aliens that are as old as time. And what he realizes when he wakes up is he can create his own reality. And at the end of the movie, what's happening is they've been waiting for someone like him to wake up so they could take advantage of him and use his spiritual power so they could take over the universe. And what happens is, he wakes up, but he figures out what's going on. At the end of the movie, they're trying to create reality. They're destroying the city because it's just a virtual reality construct. And he is, saving the city. They're trying to kill people. He's saving them. And at the end, because he's a human being, one human being alone, because he's a truly awakened human being, he's able to save the whole civilization. And all of a sudden, he goes from Dark City to them having, seeing the sunlight and being back in nature. And it was a really fascinating movie, Dark City. And in some ways, I wonder if what this could end up as is at the end of the movie, and you can actually see it online for free. It's on YouTube, Dark City. At the end of the movie, essentially what happens is, like I said, they're like having the psychic war where there's one of him, there's one awakened human being who knows that this is a virtual reality construct, and he's up against all these satanic aliens who are all male for some reason. I couldn't figure that one out. And they're trying to, destroy the civilization, and he's able to successfully oppose them and bring them down. And, that we have this immense spiritual power that, this is why we're being constantly lied to. We're constantly being suppressed while being distracted. Because maybe like the hero John Murdoch in the movie, and that movie, once again, a movie I saw once, and I thought it was a strange movie, but always stuck out in my mind. That maybe this is the way things are going to end, where literally you're seeing all these things, or you're seeing like they're putting chemical weapons on drones. You're seeing scalar weapons being used against us, HARP, all kinds of stuff. But if this reality is a virtual reality construct, maybe the way we get out of this nightmare is our own spiritual power gets so great, like the character John Murdoch, that we're able to repel all this and just not let it be decoded into reality. I just want to leave you. I want to leave you with that thought. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but I want people to think, the immense power that we have, that we're not even really tapping into, and we're being suppressed, because this might be, in some ways, a battle between not merely good and evil, but between expansion and suppression, sickness and health. Being, moving towards the light, moving towards darkness, whatever thing you want to think about. I want people to kind of think about, maybe this is what's happening, and maybe this is going to happen in our future, where we're going to have such spiritual power that we're going to turn this into a paradise, and we're simply going to overwhelm these self-appointed elites, these whatever these forces are, these aliens, these satanic entities, whether they're golems, whether we created them, or whether they're actually external, we somehow attracted them. I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Well, you said a mouthful, for one, and
no
I
kidding.
sure do appreciate it. Yeah, you really did. So all I have to say is we're in the age of revealing and transparency. Mm-hmm. Use that as a tool. What you know, share with others. And know that, yes, indeed, we are all powerful within our own right. Of course we are. And get off the lazy chair and start doing what you love to do, whatever that means, and be happy. Be happy as much as you possibly can be. And if you're a researcher, start your blogs. Don't wait. Don't delay. And start putting the information out there, because there are a lot of people who are still catching up. I mean, tons and tons of people are still catching up with what's even happening as far as we can see. And believe me, we've only covered, a tenth of what is happening. So
I
it doesn't
understand.
matter. Just use that tool of transparency. Use it and love yourself, man. Give yourself a hug. Give yourself a high five. Tell yourself that you're important. Have self-worth and value yourself exponentially.
Yeah. It's funny you said, because while I'm conducting this interview, I'm actually sitting in a lazy boy chair.
Well, you could be in the lazy boy chair because you're delivering a message.
Yeah. But it's actually something my mother gave to me. One of the very last things she ever gave to me is I was feeling very special about this chair. Like I said, before she got really ill, she bought me this really nice chair, and so I'm actually sitting in a lazy boy chair, ironically enough. Another thing I want to say about the YouTube channel is I put up a YouTube channel like 2 weeks ago, and I've put up about 250 videos. I had all these wonderful videos that I had watched.
Wow.
And I put 250, and I've had, maybe 6,000 views or something, and there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, I'm going to tell you this, people out there, you've probably downloaded a lot of good stuff.
What's
you can
your
put up a
YouTube channel?
What?
It's
just this long bunch of letters. That's why I just have a link to it. I couldn't get it said. I want to say great info to know, but I don't know how to give it like that. If you go look on the homepage,
I'll advertise it for you, Roger. I'll advertise it.
Okay, well, I'll give you the link.
If you give me your YouTube link, I'll advertise it for you.
But the point is other people can do this, and what happened was all these great videos have been put out, and I see some have been shared, and what happened was I had a couple weeks ago I had a guest on, and I had a lot of technical difficulties, and I thought, maybe I better start putting things on YouTube because I want to get in front of a bigger audience. And once I started doing that, I realized I had hundreds of really great videos, and I just upload the whole thing. I haven't spent a penny on it, and a lot of these have been shared already, and a lot of people have got all kinds of really cool videos that they've downloaded, and it's like pay it forward. Now it's your turn. You've gotten the information. Now you need to spread it on. And this is why, like I said, the first show I did was with a TV producer, because and this is why I put so many people who are radio show hosts on. You're certainly not the first one, and because we need to all be sharing and spreading this information so that we can be building this much better world for ourselves. Because we don't have to go into this nightmare that these whatever they are have want to create for us. We have choices. We can create the world we want, and we have to remember that, and we have the power. There's a reason that they lie to us, and this is a very important point. And that anyone can be making a difference, and and you can make a difference the way I'm doing it, or a lot of different ways. Just like I'm saying, that guy who has the garden in downtown L.A. When in fact when I was interviewing Laura, I said, who's to say that he's not making a bigger difference than I am? I mean, he's, there are dozens of very poor Latin families in downtown L.A. that are getting some or most of their food from the gardens that this guy created for them. And, that's a very important thing. I mean, that's not my personal thing, but I have 100% respect for him. And even when I met him, I just knew this was a man of deep integrity. And I don't remember his full name. I know his first name was Joe, actually Jose. I mean, he's Latin himself. But we can all make a difference, and make a difference in whatever way you want to make the difference, and what feels right for you to do. And, like the Roxette song says, listen to your heart. I think that's what I want to share with people, and that's why I'm doing this, because I'm listening to my heart. And I know that's why you're doing the work you're doing, and the people listening, listen to your heart and do that work. Mm-hmm. And, that's why I've been doing this. And so that's about all I have to say. Is there anything you want to say to wrap up the show, or maybe mention your website one more time before we have to hang up?
Oh, no. TheTruthTonight.com, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great conversation. It's a nice entry back on the air. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be doing some more things together
Absolutely.
in the future. And thank you. I mean, just thanks for reaching out. And like I say, it's so easy to talk with you. So I really,
Good.
it was a good time, good couple hours, just like Went up like smoke.
I know. Well, we have to end it now, but we'll send you that information and also the MP3 file for this. So I'm looking forward to a lot of people learning about this stuff and really getting out there. Okay, and with that,
thanks for sharing that with me. Yeah, I'm going to put this on my channel as well, and I appreciate you sharing the show with me. That's very kind of you.
Okay, and with that, this is Roger North signing off for Great Info to Know. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Is so bad. The propaganda is so bad at this point. This is also, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. I can't even read it anymore because I don't even, your head just goes back and forth. You know what I'm saying? It's whiplash.
Sure, absolutely. I do all the time.
My BS meter's on all the time. In the state of Arizona, there's a new one going on in the last few days. More than 1,000 illegal immigrants, children, were dumped here in the state of Arizona. The feds told Arizona Governor Brewer to prepare for more of them, about 60,000 of them. She doesn't know what's going on. Now they're raising money to try to put homes and food on the table for these people. And we don't know where they're coming from over the border, but they were in Texas, and now they're here, and they're just dumping them off by the boatloads. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, and I'm sitting here going, okay, what is this all about? Well, of course, it goes back to the threat against the governor for passing the immigration law here. See, these people, and when I say these people, these government types, these corporate types, it's all linked together, you know what I mean? And this is their little war, and this is their little game, and this is their psychopathic, frickin' casino that they're in. Yet we're all sucked into it, and we all become involved in it one way or the other. And the stories go on and on and on. And you said it. You saw children at the beach today, and you thought to yourself, gosh, do I really want children? Generations have said this. We don't want our children to grow up in a big, bad world. Yet we all have. The inside of this, what is really going on? If indeed humans want to evolve, humans need to pay attention. Humans need to, seriously, it's like I'm so over this type of conversation with so many people. It starts at home. It starts in the center of your own soul. It starts with the way you walk, the way you talk, and what you want, what we want as individuals in our life. It starts in your own backyard. Well, I can say that and preach that out loud till the cows come home. Most people won't get it because they're so trained monkeys, I call it. Trained little monkeys. We're so trained by the propaganda that just keep pointing at government and pointing at, the Bilderbergs and pointing at the cabals and pointing at the drug dealers and pointing at the murderers and pointing. It's all their fault. And I think they being, if we're going to use the word they, being the media who is owned by the government, owned by the dictatorship, they're sort of get their hands tied behind their backs. There is no true journalism existing anymore, hardly at all. Not in comparison to, let's say, even in the 60s. The 60s there was true journalism, more of it certainly than there is now. So everyone's got their hands tied behind their back, and the almighty dollar pays for them to do that. And that's the end of that story. We know money controls, money rules. And the propaganda that's spilling out into the streets day in and day out literally has trained all the monkeys. Trained all the little monkeys to do what we say and just keep creating the drama so that we can continue to point at them. And I'm kind of over pointing at them. And look, just like anybody else, I am sick of the proof involved in fracking, let's say, the absolute proof that it is dangerous, and yet our country is going into the next level of the oil and gas revolution.
This is Roger North, and this is Great Info to Know. Today is going to be a very special show, a show I've been very excited about, because we're going to look at some issues in some real depth. Just kind of give you a little brief introduction. At the risk of stating the obvious, we live in a world full of conflicts, of problems. And it doesn't exactly take a genius to conclude that the problems seem to be getting worse and worse by the day. We're moving into deeper economic problems. We're moving towards more wars. And, there's been many shows that have discussed these issues where people have talked about. I've discussed many of these issues myself, and there's certainly no shortage of radio shows that discuss the stuff in great detail. Quite frankly, the number of issues is almost innumerable at this point. But I want to do something a little different today and ask some deeper questions. For example, what is really going on? What is happening at the deepest levels? Why is all this happening? And we need to ask those questions so we can ask the most important question of all, what can we do about it? You see, people taking action without having a deeper understanding, they can be playing in the hands of the very people that they don't want to be helping. They can be inadvertently causing their own destruction. It happens all the time. Anyways, these questions are the topics that we'll be discussing with our guest, Roxy Lopez. Roxy is a native Hawaiian who has spent most of her adult life in the music industry, is a major label recording artist and performer. She is also a published author and radio talk show host, or she no longer has a show, of the Truth Denied talk radio, as well as founder of one of the most popular alternative media tabloids called The Truth Denied. Website, thetruth.denied.com. That's thetruth.denied.com. It's full of really extraordinary videos. Please do check it out. The Truth Denied acquired worldwide attention when Lopez made a global stance against geoengineering, ACA, also known as chemtrails, GMOs, fracking, environmental health hazards, Morgellons disease, gang stalking, and illegal government surveillance programs that are increasingly on the rise. Roxy opens the can of worms to the secrets of the global government is keeping from all of us. And we want to actually be looking at those secrets in a lot more detail and open up a much bigger can of worms. And with that, I welcome Roxy to the show. Roxy, how are you doing?
Great, and thank you. What a great introduction, Roger. It's great to be on the show. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. So I said, I'm just going to very briefly kind of just go over some basic things that are happening, and at the risk of being a little redundant, because probably most people are well aware. I mean, for example, it's pretty obvious that that there seems to be a great desire among the elites to enter us into World War III. They seem to look for any pretext to invade Syria, Iran, and now they're, of course, working on Ukraine. We have AFRICOM, which is, basically supposedly for Boko Haram is launching military operations throughout a lot of Africa. Before that, we have, of course, had Coney, 2012, which was also a scam. Coney was a CIA agent, and Boko Haram is looking like they're part of Al Qaeda, which is run by the CIA. At home, we have a government that is, increasingly becoming flat out totalitarian. They spy on everything we do as well.
That hasn't already been going on. In other words, there has always been a symptom of diabolical cover-up and lying, and seems to be like a yin-yang, a black and white, light and dark. Seems to be that way on this planet from the beginning of time. So all I think at this point is that what we are seeing, or what we are feeling is a better way to put it, is the culmination of maybe many, many generations and maybe even civilizations on this earth. Our planet, our people, our citizens, bring it home. We need to evolve. And evolution isn't something that I don't think we can make happen. I think it's something that naturally occurs if you look out in nature, and there's many, many signs of proof of even nature evolves, and it's continuing to evolve. Somehow there's a lot of theories on this as to why humans, or the human species, seems to not be evolving in a more rapid pace than it should be, or some type of pace. It seems like, you were talking about conspiracy theories going around in circles. I think humanity is kind of doing that. I think that, we've, we look at our ancient civilizations, we refer to them, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Hopi, the Native Americans, so forth and so forth, that had a clue about some pretty ingenious stuff like the Mayans, let's say, in science and astrology. And then you say, well, why is this timeline so off? Because if 10,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago we were such geniuses, where'd the genius go? And how did it, and where did it go? And, even with certain civilizations that, like the Mayan, who just basically vanished from the planet as if all in one day, and where did they go? This is all stuff that, really great for discussions, and E.T., and how did the pyramids get there? I mean, these are great discussions. And I think part of where we're running into a stone wall, literally, is that our history is all screwed up. What we have been told and what we have been taught is all screwed up. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. So if you're in the here and now in 2014, what do? You're getting bomb-blasted with, news and propaganda. It's like worse than a Hollywood movie. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a UFO. He films footage out in New Orleans and stuff, and Sean Gautreaux is his name. And we were talking the other day, and we were saying it's worse than Hollywood writing, as if anything gets worse than that. No. I'm not trying to sound like putting Hollywood down, but you understand what I'm saying? What they're writing in the press these days, and what the government, this whole thing with McCain and the VA, let's say. And the VA, the vets have been having problems since day one, and then all of a sudden this guy is going to step in, change a law, and right away, immediately, because now he sees the crisis. Oh, really now? Really? It just happened today. Meanwhile, this Bergdahl guy that they, soldier that they just picked up and moved to Germany, this whole game they're playing right now, this whole illusion that they're creating, and then he's the consummate deserter, he's a scapegoat, he's not a hero, yet he is, yet the President of the United States saw fit that we would exchange, 5 of their men for one of our men, it's so bad.
Well known. We could go on and on to try and bring capital control so they can basically have some kind of an engineered financial catastrophe and then steal everyone's money. They won't be able to, go to the escape exits, basically. We're seeing a lot of things happening in this world, and very few of them are positive, unfortunately, at least at one level. And there are many levels to look at this. So what I want to do is just really, briefly kind of say, okay, this is what's going on. This is easily verifiable, and, anyone who doesn't really get that we're in a lot of trouble and our world is going in really the wrong direction in a lot of ways, I kind of feel sorry for you. If that's the case, please check out a show like InfoWars, a website like InfoWars, and, DavidIke.com does a lot of things on that. Roxy's done that on her website, thetruthDenied.com. There's many sources of information on this, but I don't want to really go there. I wanted to look at some of the deeper issues. And for that, this is because my feeling is we have to understand what's going on at the deepest level, or at least a deeper level, if we're going to get out of this mess, because the world that we're moving towards is one I don't want to live in. It's a world portrayed by such movies as the Hunger Games, and I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I speak for virtually everyone that we don't want to go into the world that the elites have, stated very thoroughly this is what they plan to do to us and where they want to take the world. It's not a world I want to live in or that I'm sure you want to live in. And with that, I wanted to welcome Roxy. And Roxy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then I want to ask you some questions and kind of build on from there. How did you get involved in this kind of work?
Sure. My entire life has been focused on basically I have an attitude of service. So when I was really young, I got involved in saving the whales, saving the dolphins, anything I could on the beachfronts in Hawaii, and get involved in environmental, whatever stuff was going on at the time. And it's just my nature. But as far as building the tabloid, The Truth Denied, that came about in a shifting of gears of really seeing exactly what you're talking about, Roger, which is the world was speeding up, and the headline news, is just enormous these days. Propaganda-filled mainstream news. Mm-hmm. And I just felt in conversations I was having on Facebook, which was a great place to start with talking with other people and finding out that other people were thinking about the same thing and that there were a lot of critical minds out there as well, which is really helpful when you're having, really deep conversations. And you realize that everybody's not a numbskull, everybody is not asleep, and that's how it all began. And to be honest with you, how I got the Truth Denied website going was somebody had called me in relationship to chemtrails. And they called me from California, and they said, Roxy, there's open lines on Coast to Coast tonight. You've got to call in. Ian Puddent is the host tonight. And I said, oh, no, I never call that in. And no, you got to call in. Because they won't listen to us. They'll just hang up on us because we call them too much. So anyway, I ended up calling, and sure enough, the callers before me were talking about chemtrails. This is roughly four years ago now. And I thought, oh, God, Ian Punnett is, when it gets to my call, he's just going to hang up on me because that's what he was doing to everybody else when they were bringing up chemtrails. So I called, and I said a few statistics, and I said, da-da-da-da-da. And anyway, he embraced the conversation. I thought, how strange, because he just hung up on everybody else. And then he said the magic words, do you have a website? Because I'd like to take a look at it. And at that point, I hadn't had a website. I hadn't even thought of developing a website. And I said, right, well, I will have one, and I'll contact you later. And that got my, burned to me, lit a fire under me. So that I got together and built a website with some volunteers who I could not do this without volunteers. And from there, it went into radio right away. I got contacted right away. And I started doing interviews, believe it or not, on AM radio. And then the next thing you know, we, started doing investigations and putting those up on YouTube and sort of breaking a bunch of myths that had been going on for years and years because I wasn't inside the alternative anything at that point. I was creating my own little path, you understand what I'm saying? So I didn't even know about all these people that had been, in the game and alternative everything and UFOs and everything else. I knew some of them from going to seminars, so created the path. And a lot of people had told us that we couldn't do it without volunteers. And a lot of other people said you'll never get volunteers. You'll never get people to build a website. You'll never get people to do this stuff for free. And I said, yeah, I will, because this is all about us, which is what you really kind of touched on, the us part. And so from there, here we are today. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one thing, and I suppose, I remember I talked to you a few days ago when we were talking about grounding, and kind of a little story happened. I was running some errands, and I live in Long Beach, California, and there's a beach I've never gone to, and today I had a little time, after running some errands, and so on an impulse I went there. And the beach was called Mother's Beach. And the name was very appropriate because basically it was a bunch of young families. I mean, I was there just by myself, but I would be willing to say half the people there at that beach were probably under 10, and maybe even 30-40% were probably 5 or less. It was remarkable, and it just felt so wonderful being in this children's energy. And it really got me thinking about why I'm doing the show and why, especially why I want to talk about these topics, because I see all these beautiful, wonderful, innocent children. And I know the nightmarish plans that are busily being implemented, and it's like, this is not the future I want for them. This is not the future they want. And, as you point on your website, we're 7 billion strong. I mean, what are we doing? And, because of this, this is something that it kind of really motivated me because it kind of regrounded me as to why I'm doing this, and just being in the energy of all those young children. And it was just a very happy, playful environment. I could have almost stayed there, but obviously I had my commitment to do this. So I think that's something I want people to really understand, because the world that's being created right now is a world that I don't think very much want, with the exception of people at the very, very top or very, very bottom, depending on how you look at it. So I think that's the big preamble I want to get, and now I want to really start looking at what's happening at a deeper level, because, like I said, I think there's a lot of people in the, for want of a better term, conspiracy community that are kind of going around circles. They're going the same issues over and over, and they're exposing more things, and more corruption is coming up, and more of the evil is being exposed. And that's a good thing. That's an important thing, but we need to also, at the same time, look at things deeper. So, first of all, a question. The first question I ask, and I want to kind of go over with you, is what do you think is really going on here at a deep level, really, really going on, to use the title of this episode?
Well, let's back up a little bit. First of all, I don't think there's anything new going on the planet